So much of the dialogue in industrial today centers on the slowdown or pullback in demand. Now that has to be taken into perspective because a pullback in demand is from white-hot levels that we've never seen in the industrial market before, basically that carried us all the way through the midpoint to latter part of 2022. What we see now is definitely some pullback in demand. That was a natural extension of supply chain disruption and eventually catching up and rebalancing of the supply chain and bringing into greater balance supply-demand fundamentals globally. But as we look ahead, we see a real bright picture for industrial going forward. For instance, inventory levels. If you look at the sales ratio, or rather inventory to sales ratio, pre-pandemic, those levels were higher consistently from any point that we see right now. So inventory levels have picked up, but the inventory to sales ratio continues to trail the averages from where we were pre-pandemic, a bright side for the future of industrial space demand. If we take a look at another angle, and that is the supply side, in 2023 we delivered more industrial stock than ever before. Now that is creating some short-term supply-demand imbalance in many markets around the country. But looking ahead, the average deliveries over the next 5 years are less than half of what we saw in 2023, all the way down to an average of about 200 million square feet a year compared to the 550 delivered in 2023. A further boost to industrial space demand in the U.S. is the business strategy of reshoring and nearshoring. U.S. companies are clearly biased towards strategies that are going to stabilize the supply chain, and that means more manufacturing in the U.S. as well as nearshoring or in Mexico. And this has positive impact throughout the U.S. industrial market, but in particular in the Texas and Arizona markets, to be sure. When talking about the near-term and longer-term prospects for the U.S. industrial market, we should look at one other point as well, and that's the safety net represented by the U.S. and the U.S. economy. Right now, the U.S. is outpacing everywhere else on the globe in terms of GDP growth. While other countries are slowing down, the U.S. numbers continue to get modified upward. This is going to attract investment capital by companies and investors, and by extension, the prospects for industrial space demand and the strength in the U.S. industrial sector remains very bright. So once again, wrapping up for our conversation today, we see some real bright spots just in front of us for the U.S. industrial market. Despite some anticipated slowdown in demand, as we've seen recently, coming off of absolute record demand levels, we still see room for inventory growth. We see a big slowdown in the supply pipeline, increases in reshoring and nearshoring that are going to propel demand, and a U.S. economy that is outpacing the rest of the world. These add up to some pretty positive notes for the industrial market, especially as we look at the mid to long term just ahead.